Okay, so we're going to open it up now to some questions. If anyone has questions, they can go ahead and start asking that on financial aid, and we can figure out what can be your next steps. So in the presentation, we went over financial aid and we went over the different applications that need to be filed. Generally, students need to complete a free application for federal student aid known as the FAFSA. And this application is available every January 1 of the new year. For the current school year that we're in, 2013 to 14, the FAFSA was already up and available. For the 2014 to 15 school year, the new FAFSA will be available come January 1st, 2014. It's very important that students reference the information within any of the websites that we have for CUNY listed that will explain on the financial aid process. We have handy books and guides, and you can play this video again on demand in order to go back over the steps of what you need. Aside from doing the federal application for federal student aid, known as the FAFSA, you can also do the TAP application. The TAP application is if you are a New York State resident planning to attend a school within New York State. So that could be a downstate school or an upstate school, private or public. To do the TAP application, you would do your FAFSA application first, and then you log on to HESC at hesc.ed.gov in order to complete the TAP application for New York State aid consideration. New York State will give you upwards to $5,000 of grant funding. That means money that you don't have to pay back, provided that you're going to school within New York State and you're a New York State resident. Okay, we've got another question. The question is, how do I decide to look at the cost of attendance for schools? Well, across the board, all schools need to provide cost of attendance for their institution. And for any of the schools that you're considering, what you can do is choose to review their websites to see this data. Every school has to provide a cost of attendance, so that way students and families know what their funding costs will be up front. How much is tuition, how much are fees, how much are room and board, how much are books, and other common expenses. When going to school, you're going to have two types of charges. You're going to have the direct charges that you actually get on a tuition bill, such as your tuition and fees, and if you're dorming, a residence hall bill. But you may also have other expenses that are going to go into the cost of you going to school, such as your transportation costs, like needing a Metro card, your lunch for every day, or your books. No one bills you these things, however, they're necessary as a part of the expense of going to school. And so when schools create a cost of attendance, they're adding together the total costs for that entire period of time for which you're enrolled. If you plan on going to school for the full academic year, which is fall and spring, you get one set cost of attendance based on fall and spring and based on how many credits you're enrolled for. If you plan to go for only the fall, then you'll get a fall-only cost of attendance. If you plan to go for only the summer, then you get a summer cost of attendance. What will also vary the information on how much you're charged with cost of attendance will be your credits, how many classes you're going. If you're a full-time student, you're taking 12 credits, then you're going to get a cost of attendance based on full academic year, let's say fall and spring, plus 12 credits for fall, 12 credits for spring. Because the cost that you'll accrue based on being a full-time student will be different from your cost as a part-time student. Okay, we do have another question. Does CUNY offer any financial assistance for undocumented students? Currently, at this time, CUNY does not offer any specific awards for undocumented students. We are waiting to see what will happen possibly with the DREAM Act and what the federal government will pass in terms of funding and allowances. However, that does not preclude students from receiving scholarship that is based on merit. So if you are an undocumented student and planning on going to college, you can still apply for any number of merit-based scholarships that may exist, both at CUNY and abroad or even outside, because merit is based on purely your grades, nothing else. So that's the answer with regards to giving aid for undocumented students. Okay, I think we have another question. Let's see. How am I eligible for federal student aid programs? Well, to be eligible for federal student aid programs, which means that you also need to complete the FAFSA, a student has to be a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen. They have to complete the FAFSA. They have to be admitted into a degree granting program, which means they're actually going to school for a degree. They have to be making good academic standing and make satisfactory progress towards the completion of their degree. They can't be in default of any federal student loan or a refund of financial aid to the federal government. And they need to register usually for at least 6 credits for Pell Grant or possibly as low as 1. It really depends on the aid that they're going for. Okay, how do you know which school to put on a FAFSA application? Well, when filling out your FAFSA or your TAP application, you have to provide a college code for the particular school that you want to receive your information. The federal government merely processes the data, and then based on the schools you select, will forward that data to the schools to be processed for further awarding. So what you're going to do is there's usually a drop-down menu on the FAFSA application itself that will allow for you to select up to 10 schools for which you want to receive your information. Now, what if you have more than 10 schools? Well, what you do is you do your FAFSA, you put your first 10 schools, then afterwards you go back online and make a change to your FAFSA by dropping off a few schools and adding the remaining schools for the new FAFSA transaction to be sent to the additional schools that you listed. And got another question. It looks like it's from a question on SEEK and CD. Well, CUNY has 2 or 3 actually opportunity programs, SEEK and CD. SEEK is known as the Search for Education, Elevation, and Knowledge. It's a New York State-based program that CUNY has for its 4-year schools, which is designed to assist students who are both academically and financially disadvantaged. CD, or College Discovery, is the same version of the program at the community college level. In order to apply for consideration for the SEEK or CD program, students will complete their FAFSA application, they'll complete their CUNY admissions application, they'll also complete the CUNY application for special programs or for opportunity program consideration. In order to qualify for SEEK or CD, you also need to be a New York State resident, which is determined by the residency of your parents if you're a dependent student. So you will need, on a financial aid side, to do both the FAFSA and the TAP application in order to be considered for SEEK or CD. Okay, I've got a question about the tuition and how do students choose to pay tuition. Well, after you've been awarded financial aid, if you have financial aid, your financial aid will go towards the tuition based on the semester that's been awarded to you. And if you have an overage, meaning if you still have a remaining balance left after your financial aid has been processed and placed towards your student account, then you could decide to enroll in a tuition payment plan. CUNY colleges participate in the tuition payment monthly installment plan, and you can do that by visiting our website or the college's website at the bursar's office. Okay, I have another question. What is EFC? Well, the EFC stands for Expected Family Contribution. And what expected family contribution is the number that the government figures out that you're able to put towards college. By completing the FAFSA application, they take your parents' data, if you're a dependent student, your own data, add it together, go through a federal formula to calculate how much they think you can expect to put towards college or reasonably afford to put towards college. Now, your EFC could be anywhere from 0 to as much as 99999, which means endless, over $1 million. Obviously, the lower the EFC, the more eligibility you have for federal aid programs. The Pell Grant and most federal aid are based on, most subsidized federal aid are based on you having a EFC that is within a certain range. So it will really depend on what your EFC is in relation to the cost of attendance of the school. If a school has a lower cost of attendance and you have a very low EFC, then you may have full need. So for example, CUNY's cost of attendance roughly could be $14,000, $15,000, let's say. You complete your FAFSA, your EFC is 0, then that means that the government is saying that you can't afford to put more than $0 towards your cost of tuition and expenses for going to school. What CUNY will then do when we complete our awarding process, provided that you complete all the applications and turn in all your documentation in on time, we will go ahead and create a financial aid package for you based on your eligibility and say this student has a 0 financial contribution, they can't afford to put anything towards school, let's fund them as much as we can. We'll say cost of attendance of the institution at $14,000 minus your EFC of 0 equals your total financial need, equaling $14,000. Now, does that mean we're going to give you $14,000? Most likely not. However, we will try to fund you as much as we possibly can within the limits and confines of the programs that we deal with. Now, when completing the FAFSA, someone asked a question about how do they sign the FAFSA? Well, the best thing to do with the FAFSA is to complete it online. Paper applications are becoming obsolete and tend to take a longer processing time. So we advise that students do the FAFSA online as soon as they can when it's available. When you complete the FAFSA online, obviously there's no way to put a wet signature to it. And if you're a dependent student, you'll need to put your signature and your parents will need to sign, or one of your parents will need to sign. In order to have that happen, you apply for something called a PIN number, a federal student aid PIN, which you can apply for at www.pin.ed.gov. And by doing this PIN, you get a secured number that's special for you that will allow you to input this number, which creates your electronic signature. Your parent will need to do the same thing. Now, if you're a dependent student with 2 parents or come from a 2-parent household, you'll only need 1 parent to apply for their PIN. So what happens after you do the FAFSA? So let's say you've done the FAFSA. What are you looking for next from the federal government? What's going to be the next step? Well, the government then will send you something called a SAR, a student aid report. And the student aid report will come to you electronically if you did so online. And it's basically a summary of everything that you put on the FAFSA. It'll have all the same details information, your income information, the schools that you listed, and it will go ahead and create something by giving you your EFC, so it'll let you know how much your family contribution will be. It will put your name through a number of edit checks to confirm things like your citizenship eligibility or that you registered for selective service. And after that is done, the schools at the same time are receiving something called an ISER, or an Institutional Student Information Report. And that will be our version of the FAFSA that we get and review in order to create a financial aid award for you. Now, someone asked, how are they going to do the TAP application? Now, remember I said previously, when doing the TAP application, you need to first do your FAFSA. So let's say you've completed your FAFSA and you're a New York State resident. New York State is one of the only states that has the ability, within doing the FAFSA application, to be assessed for you doing a TAP application. So based on the detail and the questions that you answer on your FAFSA, that detail information will then put you to a hyperlink at the end of your FAFSA application to say, we think you're a New York State resident, please go on and do your state aid application. And from there, you get forwarded directly to HESC to do your application for New York State aid. Okay, someone asked how much is currently tuition at CUNY. Well, for New York State residents at CUNY, at a full-time student enrollment, meaning you're taking 12 credits or more, at one of our four-year colleges, New York State residents are charged a full-time rate of tuition of $5,730. For out-of-state residents, it's $15,000 per year. For full-time students at our community colleges, which are our two-year schools, full-time New York State resident tuition is $4,200. And for out-of-state residents attending full-time at a community college, it's $8,400. Okay, someone asked a question about work study. Work study is grant funding that a student will receive if they've done their FAFSA application and they are found to be eligible for work study at an institution. A student could get work study at one institution and not necessarily get it at another because it's campus-based federal aid. Work study will be given to you in the form of a grant. However, in order to receive the money from the grant, you will need to get a job on campus that will pay you once a month based on the rate that you got paid. So for example, you're awarded work study, so on an award notification, you see that you have a work study grant of $1,000. However, you don't get this $1,000 up front and it doesn't go towards your tuition directly. It will go towards your indirect costs that are part of your overall cost of attendance. You go through your work study placement office. They say, okay, we've got a job for you. This job works in the library, you're making $10 an hour. Working in the library, getting paid $10 an hour, you then have the ability then to work around your college schedule. So you can work a 20-hour week, a 10-hour week, fluctuating between classes. So for your first semester and you're going to school, you might have one day completely off. For that whole day then, you could choose that you want to make your work study hours, depending on the supervisor of the job. You get hired, you work, you get paid at the end of the month. That money then you can use towards your indirect expenses such as costs of books or tutors or MetroCard or all of the other expenses that you'll incur. So it's grant funding that you actually get. You don't get it directly in your pocket up front towards your tuition costs, but you do get it over the cost of going to school for the year. And just so you know, work study is one of the things that actually goes very quickly. So if you're lucky enough to be awarded work study, take it. It's a great award, and if you decide later on that it's not for you, you can change your mind, quit the job, and notify the work study placement office, who can then award that funding to someone else who might be on a wait list. So someone asked, what is verification? Well, verification is a process that can happen to a student where they are selected by the federal government based on any number of criteria, and they're then asked to bring in clarifying documentation to make sure that everything they did on their FAFSA was correct. They could be asked to turn in anything like a tax return or a W-2 or a property statement or rental income, marriage certificate. It could be any number of different things. If a student is selected for verification, it's important that they comply with the request for documentation as soon as possible. All processing of your financial aid will stop until you've gone through that process. So it's very important that you get to it as soon as it's given to you, as soon as you're notified that you are selected, hand in the documentation that's necessary to the school. If you're asked to do a tax return, it's going to most likely be a tax transcript that you're going to have to go to the IRS and request, and then the IRS will send it to you, and you in turn bring it to the school. So that'll be a certified version of the tax return that you actually filed. Okay, someone's asking a question about loans and how loans work, or federal direct loans actually, and how that works. Well, the Federal Direct Loan Program is a program where students can borrow funds directly from the federal government to help them afford school costs. Like all other loans that you borrow, you're going to have to repay those loans. And sometimes the loans will charge interest, and sometimes the interest is deferred while you're in school. So based on the FAFSA data and what you include on that, based on your EFC in relation to the cost of attendance of going to the school, will decide if you have financial need. And if you're awarded a need-based federal direct loan, it will be a subsidized loan, which will mean while you're enrolled in school at a minimum of 6 credits, the loan will be interest-free. Once you graduate from school or cease to be enrolled or drop your enrollment below 6 credits, interest starts to accrue on the subsidized loan, and you're also responsible for repayment. Now, how do you process a loan? Here at CUNY, we don't automatically award you a direct loan. If you've been awarded financial aid and you feel that you need to take a loan afterwards, we ask that you go into the financial aid office and seek counseling on your loan options, what's available to you, and what are some other choices before taking a federal student loan out. If it's such that you do still need to take the loan, then we'll have you complete a series of forms to start the process. One may be a student loan request form, the other may be the actual promissory note to sign to the loan. You'll have to sit through an entrance counseling process where you're actually counseled on the rights and responsibilities of borrowing as well. Then the school will get the funds from the federal government when it's dispersed, and we will then in turn disperse it onto your account. Whether it goes to pay your balance, if you owe a balance to the school, then the school will take its part. If there's any money remaining, then you may possibly get it in a refund to help you with your other college costs. And the government actually limits the amount of money that you can borrow for student loans. So on a yearly basis, there's a yearly amount that you can only borrow based on your level in school as an undergraduate student. So for your freshman year, it's $3,500. For your sophomore year, it can go upwards to $4,500 on a subsidized loan. And we're talking subsidized amounts, which means the interest-free amount. For juniors or seniors, it could be upwards to $5,500. And again, this is all in relation to your cost of attendance and going to school. Okay, well, that looks like we've answered most of the questions we've received. Thank you for joining me to learn a little bit more about financial aid at CUNY. If you have any questions, feel free to contact CUNY Financial Aid's office. You can try an office at any one of our colleges. And you can also visit our website at www.cuny.edu. Have a great day. Bye-bye.